The broadcast is now starting. All attendees.
Good.
Okay. All right. So good evening, Scott. This is Ken at Tortoise Capital. This is session one for our annual coaching. That's March 31st, 2019. I'll be following this agenda. We're going to take a quick look at your initial comments in the request for coaching. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on design thinking as it's applied to organizational strategy and then personal branding that I teach in my doctoral course, but which has direct insights into the process we're going to follow for the next year, because this really guides the way I think about strategic planning and then putting that into tactical planning and the day-to-day work of trading. I think it's important that you see where I'm coming from on that, and I'll talk about that as a process, and then I'm going to ask you to see what elements of that fit for you, and then how we can incorporate that into our year. I'm then going to move into the Tortoise body of knowledge, and I'm going to talk about 5 resources that are available to you. A couple slides on the central concepts that I made a integrated list in June. Somebody asked me what I thought were the bottoms-up techniques that were useful, and so there's about 35 or 40 of those that were little chunks of technical tradecraft that I ask new traders to internalize and then brief back to me in order to see if they really understand my central messages. And then I just added some top-down ideas that have come out of what I called the Swing 2018-12 workshop. So that resource is in a Dropbox, which I've given you access to, and it's probably 15 or 20 hours of material that go into detail for a lot of the integrated concepts that I think you'll be interested in. It shows how I approach blending day trading and swing trading and integrate those two, and then how I integrate swing trading with longer term position trading, and it really shows how my basic framework of ideas is fractal in nature and applies to multiple time frames. So that's a resource. So we have the central concepts. You're familiar with the chat room, which to me is the ongoing daily practice of trading that we do. And you'll see a lot of good ideas in there. The Dropbox workshop I just described. And then there's two advanced courses on Basecamp, the advanced swing course and the advanced day trading course. And each one of them has something like 10 or 11 lessons that if you're aggressive, each lesson could be done in a week. You may not need all of them, but I'm going to go through the architecture of those courses to show you where the material is, and a lot of those are the detailed explanations of the concepts in the body of knowledge. So you have basically unlimited access to those to support the specific learning that we're going to do. Then after I get through that presentation, we'll come back and then talk about a 1 week back brief, and then a 1 week initial session. I'm going to count that as session 1. This is really session 0, just to start up. And then at the end of a month that's where we'll figure out sort of the monthly progress we want to make and the areas that you find interesting. So I'm really expecting this first month really to just kind of unpack the material, see what really resonates with you, do some follow-up questions if you need an explanation, and then a month from now we'll settle in on the specific path for the sessions ahead. So let me pause there for any questions from you before I dive in.
No, I don't really have any questions. I've gone through Swing 2018-12 twice. I think I've gone through both of the advanced courses as well. All of it pretty much resonates with me. I understand all of it pretty well. Like, not that I could go execute them all. I get the theories behind it, and it actually I trade some of those things in a similar way.
Cool. Okay.
Some of the volatility expansion and contraction.
Yeah.
I'm a volatility trader, so those things resonate.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let me plow right in. I'm still getting a little bit of feedback, so what I'm going to do is put your microphone on mute for the next little piece, and then then at the periodic breakpoints, I'll open that back up so we get a cleaner recording for your benefit. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. I remember how to do that. Okay. Okay. So I was taking a look at your initial request for agenda items. So the building a foundation on professional practice and processes. To me, you're going to see me talk my way through, the daily trade framing on the daily report, the weekend report that comes out with maybe a wider and longer term view of systems, sectors, and markets. You'll see a lot of examples of how I approach the what I call the multi-time frame, multi-lens view of the market first, and then setting up sectors, and then setting up key stocks or ETFs within those sectors. I have written a little bit and talked a little bit about plan, prepare, execute, and assess. I really think that's the essential steps in an ongoing process of continuous improvement in education. I have specific, almost like checklists and little chunks of knowledge about how to do each of those, and so I will expand on those. The developing of new perspectives in order to reduce market biases. I think what I do with the multi-time frame and multi-lens are ways to look independently at the same price action through a variety of lenses, some through standard support and resistance, some through MACD, some through relative strength of sectors and markets, and then the idea of pinch and stretch, ETF2, and then the blended monthly rebalancing, all of which are derivative of price in some ways, but I think give a blended view of potentials that force us to look at the market in multiple time frames and from both sides of the trade to look where the opportunities may be. I will say that in the last 20 years that I've been doing this, there has not been a large market move in the market or in the sectors that has caught me by surprise. I've always had I guess, time to prepare for sudden moves, and then the ways I increment into positions allow me to take advantage of moves that become abnormal. And so there's sort of a continuous sense making and a continuous estimate process out of my approach that has helped me survive for coming up on 40 years now. Becoming your own coach and personal accountability and group accountability. I think that the ecosystem that we have for individual trading journal and the learning journal, along with the chat room, along with the structured coaching, provides a way to do that both for yourself with me and you, and then also the possibility of finding other folks that this stuff resonates with you, and you can do more or less with that. But a lot of people that I've worked with over the last years, decades, of they find other folks that are aligned with them and continue to work directly with each other, and sometimes through the ecosystem I create here. So it's pretty much an open door and an open community, and the people that stick around tend to share that same interest in collaboration and mutual respect, and are very open with their ideas. And so I think you'll find that there's a lot of folks that are there for collaboration if you're interested in that, but also the personal coaching and the individual learning journal provides you the opportunity to document your own accountability. And what I call the most important book that you can ever read about trading is the book that you write about your own trading, and the structure put in place for the learning journal and the chat room allows you to have that accountability, as much as you want to use that, either for yourself or in the room. Record keeping and performance analysis are, I have some ideas on how to do that for the trade journal and for the analysis of the histogram. and then how to do performance analysis with the trade index analysis. That may be an area you're very interested in. What I think is crucial is the importance of standardizing, then simplifying and documenting and recording the results of a recipe or a system so that you can compare batches of performance from a system that you execute the same way each time. If you have a basket full of apples, you can analyze the basket. If you have too much variation in your rule sets, then you can study the performance, but it's hard to attribute performance to a particular variable. So in one sense, I'm a very systematic trader in that I like to get the rules and the recipes and the robotic style of trading documented, and then looking to see how I elect to use trader judgment, and then compare the performance of the system plus my judgment against the performance of the robotically traded system, so I can determine if my judgment in effect is adding value or not. The only way to do that is to be able to document the robotic trade, or to formalize the rule set, and then that gives you the basis for comparing personal trader quality number versus the system quality number. In that case, the system quality number is what the robotic mechanical implementation gets you. The trader quality number is the difference between your performance when you add judgment to that of the robot. And you should know for any system that you're using your judgment as part of it is what the value add of your judgment is. If you're adding value, then keep doing it. If you're not adding value, then stop doing that. And so I'll give you a structured approach to analyzing that will give you ways to do that. My opinion on Kanban and bullet journaling for focus and productivity. I can answer that one sort of quickly now. I use Kanban. I am just exploring the bullet journaling. I really think bullet journaling has a lot to offer. It's a particular mode that I haven't fully implemented yet. I'm still working my way through the structure and the info flow. I will tell you that the most organized officer that I've had in the last 10 years teaching at the military college is a PhD student right now in the course. He's our group leader and is by far the most organized and productive officer I've had in the last 10 years there. And he's been using bullet journaling for 5 or 6 years and swears by it. His notebook is a marvel of organization. I've sort of dabbled through organizational systems myself for the last 30 years, trying to find ways to organize myself, and then more importantly to organize my staff and the headquarters of different sized organizations. So I've experimented with lots of different ways to get it done. Kanban is one that I have used myself because it aligns with my experiences from manufacturing and from large unit operations in the military, where I focus on production. So the principles of Kanban really work well for me. There's a strong overlap between bullet journaling and Kanban, and I think I already know enough about bullet journaling to say it's a perfectly good way to do it. Kanban is another good way to do it. It helps you focus on minimizing the number of projects you have ongoing at any given time, so that you can focus on the things that matter the most right now and are the next important things to do. So it's a way to do that visually. And so in that sense, there's a strong overlap between that and bullet journaling, which keeps track of all the other projects. Everything you do in bullet journaling, you should be doing when you're doing Kanban anyway. And so I really don't see that so much as an either or, but really as a matter of personal preference. But I think both of them can be done. The bullet journaling looks a little more comprehensive and maybe has more resources for personal application. And so I think that's probably a matter of a couple weeks to try them both on for size and see what you like. You could do a lot worse than just getting the book and giving it a shot. Finally, my view on trading as a career is that it is possible, both as an individual and then as a money manager or a investment professional. It requires a lot of effort and systems thinking. I consider it to be a trade and craft knowledge, and that all of the things that I've ever learned about how to become proficient in various professional trades applies to the way I approach trading. Not everybody takes that same position, but I look at it as an artisan, and I look at it like welding or medieval art and painting. My model for craft knowledge is really back in the Renaissance. There might be the senior artist who would have a series of meisters underneath him and journeymen and apprentices and novices, and that there were some technical elements to the production of art that they followed that used basic principles that had been time tested, and that you learn how to make a bowl by making a lot of bowls, and then learn to make one, then make a family of bowls, then expand into other areas. So I take the general approach that this stuff is learnable and it's tradecraft. Other folks take the position that it's such a psychological journey that you have to start with a reinvention of yourself. I don't see it that way. I understand how it could be that way, but I'm 62 years old, and I've learned how I learn, and I know what works for me, and so I can testify to that, and so I can't really judge those other methods that I haven't personally applied. I've seen people reinvent themselves and become outstanding traders, but for me, sticking to the basics of blocking and tackling and craft knowledge and documented processes aligns with my experience in the professional world, and I'm content with that. And so that's the general approach that I'm going to take. So that's the quick look at what my quick response to those ideas. Let me unmute you there for any questions or comments before I dig deeper.
Yeah. So no, that's good. I've started the bullet journaling. I've started the book, so it seems like it's going to do me some good. So I just need to implement that as soon as I, have a good handle on it. View on a trading career is it something that I guess, I'm 54. I've been doing this since I was 21 or 22. And on occasion I say, well, what is the point of trading? Just from a philosophical point of view and societal point of view. But I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I have. I actually did you're going to see a link here in a minute to just for grins. I did a interview with a guy from Australia, I think Cam Hawkins, who's put together a little collection of trader interviews and like a watering hole for trading ideas and trading coaches and people interested in systems and whatnot. And so
I've listened to it. I've heard you on it actually.
Oh, okay. So that kind of had some background. I was going to send you a link to that. That has my own, trading career and view on systems development, some of that stuff.
Actually, if you could send that to me, because I think the one that's on the podcast is actually a shortened version, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, he sent me one that was about 70 minutes long. It was the full deal. So I'll send you that link. And that one did a pretty good job of. He has a good set of structured questions that I thought were they were helpful for me to kind of get all those answers in one spot. On the philosophical approach, I sort of look at this as I take the legacy-based approach to the things I do, and this is a speech I give to my military officers because they're generally about 35, about halfway through a 20-year career. And then no matter what, in another 15 years, they're all going to retire and they're going to be 50. And so I talk to them about the ages 20 to 50, you're kind of digging out of the hole that your parents dug for you. You either bought everything they said and they're responsible for the hole you were in, and it took you 30 years to get over what they taught you, or you rejected everything they said, and so you went the other way, and so you're still in a hole that they made because of their best efforts to try to do what's right for you, and they can't help it because they're mammals, and that's what we do. So there's really, everything you did from 0 to 20, you can blame on your parents, and they're 100% responsible for where you are.
Right.
And then by the time you're 50, there's some, I think it may have been Oscar Wilde said, uh, everybody at 50 has the face they deserve. And sort of like the, what the hell was the, I'm drawing a blank on the picture of Dorian Gray, where all his evil was, marking up that picture,
Right.
and he had a different face to the world. But so really,
Right.
if my son, the mathematician, I laughed about this one time. So we drew a little line from 20 to 50 on the left-hand side of the curve. It's 100% them and 0% you. But by 50, it's 100% you and 0% them. So each year, there's a 3.33% is more your fault than their fault. So at 35, it's 50-50. Then that's a tipping point. So, we talk about what's the shape of that curve and how soon is it, is it really a linear transfer? But at 50, so what I tell my officers is at 50, it's 100% you. So you have 30 years. It took you 30 years from 20 to 50 to figure out who you are, how to respond to the hole you were in, get a profession, and make something of yourself, raise a family if that's what you're doing, and then be fully accountable for who you are at 50. And then you get 30 years from 50 to 80 to create your legacy. And so at 80, um, uh, the Chinese would say that's when you can begin to think about being a sage if you want to. That you until you're 80 and have raised 2 generations of your family, you've got obligations to meet before you can be selfish and go sit on a mountaintop and think deep thoughts. So they have a very practical orientation to the years of your life, So, so I say from 50 to 80 is your legacy, and that at 80, if that's when you die, and they're standing around a hole and looking in at you, and what is it that you want people that you care about or respect to say about you? What was the mark that you left in those years from 50 to 80? So figure out what those 5 things are. Now, a guy named John Strzelecki, who I met at one of Van Tharp's workshops, wrote a book called The Big Five for Life. And he said you should figure out what those 5 things are that you want to accomplish, and then everybody that you meet within the first minute, you should tell them what those 5 things are and ask for their help if they have any, because they'll try to help you. And then you find out what their 5 are, see what you can do to help them, and then each one teach one, that kind of deal, where you are mutually supporting everybody you ever meet, and you immediately focus on the things that are most important, and then make sure everybody you know knows that, and then that becomes your accountability and maybe a source of networking. So it's a pretty powerful idea. He did a little workshop where the folks then wrote down their big 5 and had to walk over to the next door mall and then meet 5 people in the next 3 hours and have that conversation with them and then write down what it was like to do that. And it was kind of a breakthrough experience for a lot of folks that, you can actually just do that with everybody you meet. If you can do it with a perfect stranger, it should be easy with everybody else. Right. So in my view, you figure out what those 5 things are. For me, it turned out to be not accomplishments so much as like John wanted to compete in the Olympics and climb Everest and all that stuff. And when I went through my stuff, it turned out it was states of being. Or roles that I play. I wanted to be a good father, husband, teacher, student, and warrior. And warrior in the Eastern sense of fully intentional living, that in the mastery of self, sort of the old martial arts idea. And so everything I hope to do, everything I do when I'm perfect, should be in direct support of one or all of those 5 things. And then I try to do the things I do in a way that makes me better at all those 5. Well, when I think about trading then as an activity, as a father, what trading allows me to do, the effects of that are, to provide a living for, the clan, to take care of their their finances. As a teacher, I get to teach them how to do that for themselves. I get to model ethical behavior to them as a father. As a husband, it allows me to work with my wife in the business, and since she's the owner, I get to support her in all her objectives and follow her instructions to the letter.
She's the owner. I'm sorry. She's the owner of what?
She's the owner of our business, Tortoise Capital. So,
okay.
I am her executive officer and action guy, but she gets to make all the decisions, and that way I know who I'm working for, and who I have to report to for my results. So she's my accountability.
Is she a trader?
She has, and she does occasionally, but she would rather be the boss of me and let me trade.
Yeah.
So, but she's done enough of it to enjoy it, and but there's other things she likes to do better. It's kind of time intensive, and she would rather do other things. So, she trades my effort for her leisure. I hope she didn't hear that. Yeah. So then, as a teacher and a student, both of those are really the reason I like. I mean, I like teaching because that's who I am. And to be a good teacher, you've got to be a good student and then model good student behavior in order to teach about it. Teaching a subject requires you to learn a lot more than you might settle for as a student. Because as a student, you learn the way you like to learn. As a teacher, you have to be prepared to facilitate the learning of everybody else you're teaching. So it causes you to have empathy, to look at different ways of learning, to understand your material in such a way that you can present it in multiple modes. And in so doing, you end up learning more about the subject you're teaching because you've seen it through multiple points of view. So it turns out for me that the act of teaching and like doing this coaching and doing workshops and all that makes me a better student of my own craft. And so there's a very selfish reason that I teach is because it makes me a better trader. It gives me access to material that I could only get by trying to teach, if I can put it that way. So that's the, I see all the time, well, if this guy really knew what he was doing, he wouldn't be teaching. That's such a trivial thought that it really misunderstands what the nature of teaching is. I think to the martial arts experience of, you get to the first and second degree black belt, you now are allowed to do your own self-teaching and instruct. But to get beyond second degree, you have to be a teacher of the other guys in the dojo because you end up learning to see the moves and the styles and the kata and the techniques and the process through beginner's eyes once more, and it gives you deeper insights into what's going on. So that's been my experience with it. And then finally, the notion about the warrior is just simply to try to be intentional in my living, to know why I do the things that I do and to be accountable for them. That turns out to have a very profound impact on trading because it causes you to look at the impulse for action, to find out what the source of that impulse is, and then to make a decision about whether or not to act on it. So it puts a wedge in between the impulse to act that comes from the monkey mind or from trained behavior, and it requires you to be the human in the loop to make the decision to act or not. So the act of trying to live as that Eastern warrior in every dimension of my life has a profound impact on I think the discipline and the reality of trying to trade. I still recognize the impulse to act on new information, but now there's a structure to how I respond to that, and I can still act in a way that is sensible with respect to trading, but also acknowledges that most of my good ideas came about from some deep recognition of a new idea that turned out to be good, and that if I never acted on those impulses, then it would just bottle up until I couldn't stand it and it would blow up. So I got to have some way to respond to the insights that come in the form of an impulse to act, but then just study it as a mature trader would and allow my little monkey mind the reward of giving me new insights, which is where creativity comes from, and the important emotions of fear and greed, which are part of being a mammal, but the trader part of me has to be able to know what to do properly with those impulses. So I protect against impulsive action, but I also benefit from impulsive action. So I'm mindful of all of those urges to act beyond the rule set, if I may say it that way. And now I have a habit of what to do with that so that I can examine it to see if there's something there. Every good idea I've ever had that added on to something I was doing came from initially an impulse to act from something that I saw in the moment, and then instead of trying to suppress that or control it or eliminate it, I needed an outlet for that, but in such a way that I didn't lose my mind and lose the trading account. So the act of learning to respond to those emotional impulses became an important way of managing my trading behavior. So for me, then philosophically, I would just come back to that. So why trading rather than something else? I'm good at it. I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching. It integrates perfectly with everything in my life and lifestyle. I enjoy the intellectual challenge. I enjoy the action of it. I enjoy the results that I get from it. And I enjoy teaching it. And it seems to be something that, as long as there's humans involved in the market, will be viable. So I think it's robust. Now, the spiritual element of it, I guess, or the purposeful nature of it, comes back to the big five. And that is, I say, look, if I can make a living at it, can I do it in an honorable, professional way? Answer is yes. Does it add value to the world? Well, directly, I think it does, because it allows for efficient markets and to prevent the collapse of markets requires traders. Otherwise, you get central planning, and the Soviet Union proved that doesn't work. So without traders, you don't have that kind of orderly processing of world events. So there's a reason why traders are needed. Then there's the deeper connection, which is that if you're making money at it, the purpose that you put that money towards is directly connected to the purpose of trading itself. And if you are a fully aligned person, then you're aware of who you are and your mission and your legacy, just to connect back to that idea. That if you have a mission and a purpose, and you make a difference in the world, so that 80, they're talking about the impact you left on the world, it's really the effects of the actions you took. It's the ends in that case. If the means are honorable, then the ends become the purpose that justifies those means. So for me, hey, you're just sitting around, you're exchanging this for that, and you're a middleman, and you're harvesting, the difference in some kind of positive expectancy system. I said, well, yeah, that's the trading process, and I don't confuse that with the purpose of my life, which is to have effects in the world. And that's where the point of those big five come back into. And what is it that you stand for? What are you defending? What are you trying to achieve? What effects do you have in the world? That's how I look at as the justification for the money that I'm that I'm making, and it's the purpose that I put it towards. So there are guys that I know that Van talks about, and that the Super Trader book talks about. And Market Wizard's book, talking about guys that self-sabotage because they somehow didn't feel they were worthy of it, or it was appropriate or proper, that they were making money at this and other people were suffering, to which I say that's suffering is part of the world. Ask the Buddha, that's the first noble truth. So if the purpose you put that money towards is alleviating suffering, then you're aligned with some, the noble truths and all that. But it's the effects and the purposes that you put your gains towards. Then if you say that, well, I have skill at doing this, and if my job is to apply the fruits of my labor towards a larger purpose, then that actually acts as a way to support you in proper action or right action, which is trading properly. So if I'm following my process and it leads to making money, then I can deal with impulsive action and greed by saying, look, I'm going to act in a way that is sensible and as a servant to others. So I need you, monkey mind, to not push me into impulsive actions that can jeopardize the account. I'm gonna grant you, your own fun and games. I will trade new ideas in smaller amounts till I can prove the principle. But I'm not going to let impulsive action put my, life's purpose at risk simply because I'm greedy or fearful. So in that sense, trading as a career for me is part of a larger purposeful life that's geared towards the things that my big five, and that I think the path to answer that inner voice about, do you really deserve this, and should it be done? Is it adding value to humanity? Is best answered by, am I using honorable means? And if so, then you check that block. You're a professional, and that's honorable. And then what is the purpose towards which I am committing the fruits of my labor? And if you're satisfied that that is honorable and proper, then I really think, how much more, philosophical work needs to be done until you're 80 and you can think deeper thoughts, I suppose.
Okay, right.
So and that would be more like, opportunity cost. And if I'm spending a lot of time refining my craft, then by necessity, I'm not exploring new things that I haven't even imagined to see what more I could do. I'll leave that till I'm 80 and I'll figure that out. But you're 54 and I'm 62. How much more time for exploration is there compared to time for exploitation? So if you think about R&D as a process anyway, and you're looking at your life's purpose, there's a certain amount of exploration you have to do in order to determine what you're any good at within reason, but there comes a time you got to start committing to action so you can exploit the benefits you have. If you look at some of the work Scott Page has done, it turns out that about 37% of your time should be spent in exploration and 63% of the time should be spent in exploitation. That if you spend less than that time, you may have missed the opportunity to find something you're good at. But if you wait much longer, you haven't left yourself time to get really good and make a difference by refining your craft. So for both of us are probably past that point where there's whole realms of activity that we have just missed. Now, other people that take the sort of the reinvent yourself, at the moment of your midlife crisis or whatever, might disagree with that. They said, hey, take the time and fully commit to an exhaust. I don't have time for that, and I'm not interested in it. But other people have written on how to do that, and I will leave it to them to guide you if that's the area that you want to explore. So that's about all I want to say about some other friends of mine that work in that area.
Okay.
If I may put it that way.
Yep.
So that's kind of my view on trading as a career, sort of the spiritual, professional justification for it. And then it connects back to my approaches to get on with it with the craft of trading, and then to do it in a professional grade and due diligence are my two buzzwords with my military officers. So they're at age 35 and they've been successful as direct action leaders, where the force of their personal example was good enough to get it done and to be successful. Their performance directly as a soldier made a difference to everybody within arm's reach and the sound of their voice. They're making the transition to organizational leaders, where their thinking and their writing and their systems approach is going to make a difference to the broad organization. So they have to adopt a different mindset. And that requires that they take on new habits of mind and new habits of performance. And the watchword is that to be a professional means that you have to perform to professional grade, meaning what's expected of the profession of a competent person. And that means, homework and study and application. And then due diligence means that you actually put in the effort to manifest that professional activity in how you approach the work. It's not enough to know, you must also do, and to a measurable, accountable standard. And that's the mindset that I'm trying to teach them, and to teach them how to do that as a staff officer when they're responsible for ideas and plans, and not so much, personal leadership in the way they perform in combat, that kind of stuff. So that's sort of my approach to all of this material as a trader. And you'll see a strong connection between my military background and my experiences in that profession with how I approach the craft of trading. So for me,
Right.
as an example, a commander uh, has soldiers under their command to accomplish the mission, but he subordinates himself to their support and their welfare and their training and their preparation, and would never frivolously expend them because of impulsive behavior that was not accompanied by professional grade and due diligence. So that's the obligation we have towards all of our soldiers who have committed their lives to following the orders that we're going to give them. So we make sure the orders we give them meet the standard of professional grade and due diligence. So for me, as a trader, I go into the trading day every day, reminding myself of my obligation to my soldiers or those that I'm supporting. So in my mind, my military commitment to soldiers is my commitment to my family and my clan, and to everybody that I work with that's following my ideas or supporting my ideas, whatever the people that I collaborate with have the same kind of relationship in my mind as soldiers do for me, and that's because my number one value is duty, a duty to others, and so that takes on a sacred posture for me, or sacred value, and that helps me manage those impulses to act out of fear or greed. That I know I have a process of what to do when I get that impulse to act, and I follow that process, and then the ability to do it at the right size ensures that I do no harm to the team. So for me, that's part of the back to your first bullet point about building a foundation based on professional practices and processes. I'm going to talk about the technical elements of that, but the emotional content, the commitment at the level of identity is at that level. So for me, soldiers have a particular um, value and meaning to me in my life. It's a sacred duty, and so by linking that feeling to the people who benefit from my trading allows me to leverage what made me successful as an officer and as a soldier to bring that same level of commitment into the way I approach trading. So one of the things that I have helped people do is try to see what those sources of values and inner strength are, and try to find ways to make that connection into the trading process so that you bring that same analogy or that same feeling into the way you approach trading. And then when professional grade and due diligence just feels hard to do, sometimes you just got to go back to the well and take a drink from that cup of motivation and say, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing it for. It's not for myself. It's for my soldiers or for my family or for whatever deep-seated value at the identity level you're trading for. What's the purpose of that trading? And then that helps get through the tough times, when it's hard to follow the checklist or it's hard to do the due diligence. You say, oh yeah, what am I doing this for? Oh yeah, those things. And then that you can either shame yourself into doing it or you find the inspiration to do it, depending on whether you're raised Catholic or not, I suppose. You find that emotional energy to get it done, right? And then that gives you that psychic energy to go through to plan, prepare, execute, assess. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just agreeing with what you said.
Yeah. Okay. So that's in that triumvirate there of self, systems, and market. That was really about the self. Because I'm a systems thinker, I tend to approach everything in a systems way. So even the way I go about thinking about self and psychology is done in a systematic way. So I develop trading systems using systems thinking. I look at the market through a systemic view, and I look at the process of continuous improvement for myself, capital S, in a systematic way. So the daily tasks of trading that Van talks about, the weekly debriefing, the monthly performance review, all of those things take on a systematic checklist quality which is what you do when you're tired or when you don't know what to do. You consult the checklist. When you know what to do, you should do it. When you don't know what to do, you check your checklist, and then if there's still some nagging suspicion, then periodically you got to go beyond that to see what else needs to be done. I'll talk about that when I get to the design thinking in a way, but that systems approach, looking at self as an input, process, and output in an environment, aiming towards continuous improvement is very much part of my professional practice and my personal process. Okay. So that's about everything I wanted to say on that so far. Other than to say, I think of all those bullets, I think all 7 of them, you'll find a connection to in the material and in the topics that I'm going to splat out on the screen and ask you to think about. The professional losses and all that, and the capable of trading 5 units. Going back to the top piece up there, capable of trading 5 units, taking profits on 4, and then letting the last 1 unit cost me all that I made on the 4. I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the 4 bullets and making bricks and that whole analogy of standardized units of risk and reward. I talked about that in the Swing 2018-12, where I talked about standardized units of risk in order to fairly compare systems in the same time frame and across time frames. Can you remind me? Did you get a chance to look at all of those from the Swing 2018?
I read.
Okay.
I
Okay.
all those videos.
Okay. Yeah, there's some ideas. That whole idea about the and I didn't add this to the slide, but so I already owe you one. The idea of for me, this one, the more I think, the more profound it feels for me. The difference between execution risk and position sizing risk is absolutely fundamental to a systems-based approach to continuous improvement. It's one of the ways you can put that, the five units, taking profits on 4, letting the last one go. It's a way to put that into a structured framework that'll stop you from doing that by treating them all as bricks and units of reward and risk, and every brick is a brick. And what you're trying to do is build a palette of bricks in your time frame so that you can then apply it towards the larger project that you're building towards. It gives you the ability to visualize what you're doing in the moment as just one transaction in a production process that is making bricks through standard application of good principles with lots of iterations, and just making bricks every day, and then building something out of those bricks according to the grand design, which is driven by your values and your ultimate purpose. But it places the transaction level of decision making, the tactical decision making, inside that larger context, and will help you from letting one thing just turn everything else to crap and giving it all back. Right. So that's the central teaching that I would do on that approach. So the discussion from the Swing 2018-12, the difference between execution risk and position sizing risk. If I could make traders do one thing, it would be to watch that every day for 30 days. And if I could only make them do 2 things, I would make them watch the 2R battle drill every day for 30 days. Because that one is the key.
I've watched it a couple times.
Yeah, I mean that's the one. What do you do? It's like the problem of the dog that's chasing a car. Oh crap, he caught it. Now what are you going to do with it? So much of what we do, professionally, is to sort of structure our approach so that we don't lose more than 1R of the initial risk. And so the first thing I do when I look at a histogram of a guy's results is I say, well, was this histogram produced by one set of rules that were all executed, approximately the same way? I allow for a little bit of variation, I suppose, but did one system faithfully applied produce those results? And then if so, we can study the histogram as a histogram. It's actually a population that comes out of a standard process. We can reduce the volatility of that process or reduce the variation by getting it under control and eliminating, too many variables. And then so you can refine the process so that it's really under control. And then you can always study that output. And then the first thing I look at is, did I ever take more than a 1R loss? And I'm going to say that as a 1R position sizing loss. If I have, then what that means is there was a risk that I thought that I could manage at the 1R level that it turns out that I couldn't. That something happened that caused me to lose more than what I thought I could control or I thought I could manage. So the first thing I look at is, can I keep that histogram so that I don't have any losses greater than 1R? The second thing I look at is, do I have a normal looking histogram between -1 and +2R? So if I require a minimum 2-to-1 reward to risk ratio, that's based off of the position sizing risk. So whatever I set as the position sizing risk, or that risk that I should never take a greater than 1R loss on, whatever that distance is from the moment of entry to the moment of exit, I have to be able to see a reasonable 2R of gains from that situation, or I don't have a favorable reward to risk ratio. So I'm basing that off of whatever the position sizing risk is. I have to be able to see 2 reasonable scoops of return to the upside or of the reward side. So if I do that, and then I execute my system the way it should work most of the time, the majority of the time, I should see a histogram between -1 and +2 that is positive expectancy. And I should see something like a normal distribution, which tells me that what I have is a system that is corresponding to a situation in the world that is repeatable, that is manageable, that produces positive expectancy, and it's not just me gaming the system or whatever, but there is some stable process that's generating these opportunities that are paying me. The third thing that I look at is, do I have any gains that are greater than 2R? I would like that answer to be yes. When that happens, what that means is that I am open to the possibility that the success in my time frame led to the next higher time frame adding into that position and carrying me beyond my limits in a way that I couldn't anticipate, don't deserve, but which I'm willing to participate in. And that does 2 things. Number one, I have to be open to the possibility that it could keep going. Like if it gets to 2R, that's a really good win for me in my time frame. But there's a possibility that it blows through my resistance because the next higher time frames are starting to add in, and then they carry me beyond. So I got to be open to the possibility that that could happen. My discipline at taking my losses not greater than 1R means that I don't get fat tail events on the downside. So if I can control that side of the histogram and I get paid for the work that I do between -1 and +2, then I can be open to some gains that I don't deserve in the land beyond 2Rs, right? So that means that I'm looking for usually some kind of resistance was in place around my 2R move. But sometimes that resistance disappears and guys just blow right through it and they keep buying it. And I got to be able to either get back in if I got out. I can recognize that runaway move really developing at the higher time frames. Or I've got to be prepared to add to that position with gains already in hand and be very strict about how I protect against that a reversal. So if it gets past 2R and I get that second position in, I'm in the land of irrational exuberance, and now I can't let that ever jeopardize the initial gains that I made. And that gets exactly to the point that's in your first paragraph, and that is, I made gains on the first 4, and now I have a belief that this thing could be working. No, I have belief that the 2Rs that I made is actually a signal for the other guy to come in and smash it. But sometimes he doesn't, and so I got to be open to that possibility. So the whole idea of the 2R battle drill gets right to the point of what do you do when you have the 2R in hand and it looks like it may really be big and you feel that tug of greed or excitement that makes you want to get large and really want to believe that this is the time that it works. Well, that's the time that my structured approach to managing that position keeps me from going off the deep end. It is the essential, it's the insight into the essential difference between rational exuberance up to 2R and irrational exuberance beyond 2R. That beyond 2R, it's irrational exuberance, and I am unprofessional if I allow myself to lose money that I worked so hard to get up to 2R just because this thing was potentially running away. If it comes back below my 2R level, I have to be all out by that point so that I don't give back professional dollars because of the irrational exuberance. It would be unprofessional of me to do that. So it's important for me to feel professional. I feel professional when I am professional. I am professional when I follow the rules that protect the professional profits against irrational exuberance failing. So that would be the central teaching, I would say, on that first paragraph that you listed there. So if I could require a guy to look at something every day for 30 days, it would be, first one would be that the difference between position sizing risk and execution risk, and then the 2R battle drill. Are those two things to me are the structural math behind keeping you in the game long enough to be professional. So over to you.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've watched those and I understand them.
Yeah.
I understand why you do them,
Yeah.
and it makes perfect sense. It's very good risk management. It keeps your contract size under control, and it keeps you it keeps you with a process, and it forces you to be ready to take profits when you need to.
Yep.
And at the same time be ready to add positions if it moves on out of the pocket.
Yeah.
And then the dinner for two plus.
Yeah. That one's absolutely. That one is absolutely essential. That's really about the space between -1 and +2. If you can ever nudge that giant histogram of, that's where 90% of my results are, and my transactions are in that area. If I can nudge the average win to the right a quarter of an R, that's enormous payoff to me. And that allows, so I feel like I'm on a scholarship between -1 and 2R to refine my craft. And then every so often, this outrageous good fortune happens to me when I get beyond 2R. And I never treat those as something that I was entitled to, or I believe in, or I deserved, or causes me to change the way I look at the essential setups that got me those gains. I just look at it, all of them look the same when they're leaving the station, so there was no way to pinpoint the one that turned out to be the fat right tail, right? So I don't even add those into the overall system performance so that I don't get distorted on my expectations. I want to be really clear about managing the hard work between -1 and 2, and I just take the other ones as gifts and skim that off the top and try not to dwell on it. That's the mindset that I try to adopt. Guys would say, well, you're leaving a lot of money on the table by not. I say, that's fine. Do what you want. I know what I'm like inside my own head, and I know what I need to do at age 62. And that's, for me, the best psychological and mental and emotional trade-off. It's allowed me to scale larger, and I actually do better by doing that. But it allows me to put that all into perspective and keep my emotions properly addressed. I'm not going to say managed or controlled, because you can't really do that to emotions. You can manage the consequences. You can put a wedge in between emotion and action, but you're not controlling the emotion any more than you're controlling those flood rivers, right? Or flooding rivers.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point I would make on those. So what I wanted to do then real quick is these next two things, this personal brand and a 5-year plan. These are things from the doctoral students. What I do with them is these are guys that generally, I'm in like an executive doctoral program. Most of them are in their 40s and 50s and are looking to add the doctorate in management to their practice. Some of them want to teach, some of them want to consult, some of them want to improve their practice as an executive by doing the academic and practical work. Some of them want to start their own businesses. Some of them don't know really for certain why they're doing it. They just feel called to do it. So I go through a process of personal branding and a 5-year plan with them to help them look beyond the difficult limits of the program itself. It's hard to do this work. I mean, it was 40 hours a week for me for 5 years, and it consumed me. And the way I was able to get through it, one of the reasons is that by having a plan beyond the graduation, that 5-year visualization was pulling me forward so I could keep my eyes on the prize. The reasons why I was getting the doctorate were to be in support of that plan for where I'd be 5 years after completion of the program. And so the process I went through to do that is similar to the process I went through with Van, standardizing and systematizing my trading practice. And I keep saying Van because I believe you've worked with Van Tharp before. Am I correct on that? Looked at his material?
Well, I actually worked with Adrian Tograi, and I purchased the what's it called?
Probably Peak Performance.
I had it in the 90s, so
yeah,
Peak
okay.
Performance, thank you.
Yeah. So he spends a lot of time on the psychology of things, and some elements of the systematic approach. And so I respect the work that he's done on the psychology of it and his business-like approach to developing the business plan of trading. So I respect all that. There's a lot of overlap between his thoughts and my thoughts. It's not a complete overlap. There are things that he does that are not necessarily part of my plan. So anyway, as I went through that inner work, the personal branding and the 5-year plan helped me get through that program. It's something that I teach these guys to show them how they can use the doctorate of management and the things that I teach them towards the things on the right-hand side, the business plan, the action plan, and the elevator speech. Let me highlight this. So that's sort of the thing that I tell them. That's what you got to do as the outputs. And so like Kobe says, focus on, start with the end in mind. That's what I help them do, is the business plan that shows what they did to get to their 5-year goals beyond the graduation, and then show them how to build the action plan that makes that business plan real, and then work with them on the emotional piece with the elevator speech, the 3 to 5 minute statement of intent and purposeful action that you get from the investment community. It says if you're an entrepreneur, you got to have a 3 to 5 minute speech so that if you run into Bill Gates, you can give him that, and then he'll want to invest in you. It's really what I think as a trader, you got to be able to say who you are, what you're about, what your edge is, and why it's going to work, so that you can calm your inner mind and give yourself the confidence that you deserve because of your professional grade and due diligence. But it's really that it's how you answer all those negative voices in your own head or from others. You say, hey, you can't do this stuff, or it's really not it's not real, whatever. So the elevator speech is kind of the verbalization of your essential success, right? The action plan is the steps you take in order to make the business plan a reality. The business plan really comes from this group of things in the middle. This middle group, those are all lenses or concepts or processes or models that allow you to take the inner work. So when you do the inner work and you find out who you are and strengths and weaknesses, and that you explore the inner space, that gives you a bunch of raw material about who you are and what you're about that comes out to me in the big 5. your goals and objectives and your values and all that stuff. So by answering all those things, you get that raw material. You then can put on, I think of all of these things in the middle as block 2, if you will, as lenses that allow you to take all this raw material, you run it through these lenses, and it gets distilled into the output, which is the business plan, action plan, and elevator speech. So these are the things that I teach the doctoral guys how to do that. And the design thinking, systems thinking, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, who your stakeholders are, your business planning, risk management, assumptions-based, all of these things are the things I would advise you to look at, and the guys in the coaching group I'm working with, and guys who have not thought about trading as a profession, as a business. These are all things that help them get beyond the, gee, I love trading because I bought something, it went up, and I made money, hooray. And that's sort of the extent of, and they want to keep doing that because they like it. The adrenaline-based approach to trading. These are the ways that you can add professional practice, right? So I will talk also about the Cotter change model, the 8 steps towards transforming who you are into who you want to be at the 5-year mark, right? And all of these things to me are the same things that I advise guys to do when they're designing their own business, or they want to consult people, help people design their own business, are the same things that I, not surprisingly, bring into the trading process, because I view it as a business, and so the output of those lenses are these things. Now, I would add to it a bunch of the things that you'll see on some following pages that are not just the process things, but some of the content, which are what I would think of as the tortoise trading pieces that you've already seen, right? So if that's what I coach them to on the 5-year plan. The next thing, what I have them do in the course I
planning
teach.
for 5 years.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the 5-year plan is something that I need to really work on, because I would say a 5-year plan has never been something I've done.
Yeah.
And don't find it particularly easy. Yeah, it's easy for me to do a 1-month plan or a 1-year plan, but a 5-year plan.
Yeah. What I would actually,
it's never been my strength.
Yeah.
How's that?
Here's how I would ask you to think about that. And I would start with even further with the end in mind. If you started with if we said something like the big 5 were those key values at the end, at the end of your life,
yeah,
it almost looks like a little man in there with the values in his heart right in the middle. How about that? Didn't mean to do that, but that's what it was. So if that's where you were at 80, what is it that they're saying about you? You can work kind of backwards to the 5-year plan. Think of that as the first in a series of stepping stones that lead you towards, where you want to be at 80, 25 years from now. So that 5-year plan is kind of that first documented, no kidding, I accomplished all the things that are going to allow me systematically to achieve my life work. So if I'm here in the present and you're getting these these little monthly plans, these little short-term tactical things, well, what we want to do is this gets to the idea of leverage. So in the military planning, what we think of as the tactical, the operational, the strategic levels. At the strategic level, we're talking about the ultimate purposes of the reason why we're committing lives and treasure to doing the things that we're doing. Tactical is what I'm doing day to day in a series of little transactions to attack the next hill or to cross the next river. What I want to do is make sure that all of the things that I'm doing tactically are bound together in a campaign plan at the operational level that allow me to start achieving intermediate objectives. If you think about America in World War II, and they said, hey, we're going to defeat Nazi Germany, the first thing we got to do is we got to build our national industrial base and mobilize the nation. Okay, check, we're doing that. Second thing is that we've got to stop the bleeding. We've got to stop the Nazi offensives with a series of defenses where we can at least contain them. We did it in North Africa. And then in Asia Pacific, check, we did that. Now we got to build up a series of intermediate objectives to start recapture North Africa, then Italy, and then in the Pacific, so that we could learn how to conduct major land combat operations against the experts in that area. We're not ready to go strike to Germany, so we start cutting away pieces of that. If that was the German Empire, we got to cut away North Africa, and then Italy, and then southern France, and then get a foothold in the continent and start doing. So there's a series of interrelated campaigns that are slowly building towards that top level strategic objective. So really what this 5-year plan represents is the first step in a larger plan of linking together large chunks of your life, more than just the day-to-day, 1 day, 1 week, 1 monthly plans, but it really is putting into place a series of habits and systems and processes that let you build towards that first stepping stone of a 5-year plan and a restatement of purpose. You're 54, so think about who you want to be at 60. Who is that person? And some of these, I'm going to get to that on the next stage. So that 5-year plan is the first step in building out a series of further plans. And what you end up doing is, as you start doing your annual updates, you start marching that 5-year plan further and further. And so the 5-year plan pulls the 1-year plan towards it, which pulls these quarterly reviews, which pulls these monthly reviews. And now what you end up having is a series of tactical tasks that are feeding towards quality in these areas, which are helping you reach these intermediate objectives, which helps you become this new person at the 5-year plan that you want to be, which is aligned with who you want to be at 80. So I don't want to be 80 locked into the choices I made at 50, unless I really confirm all along the way that, yeah, that person I'm continuing to refine to 80. And so I want a series of things that allow me to start moving out. But by 50, you have a pretty good idea of what you think you want to be at 80. And so these other supporting events really help us iterate towards who I ultimately going to be at 80. But at 50, you have it's fair to say, I have a good idea who I want to be at 80. At 20, I don't have a freaking clue who I want to be at 50. I may put a mark on the wall, but you don't really know enough then to really. So at 20, you want to start putting into play some actions that give you choices. So at 50, but at 50, you want to start building on those choices, leverage those strengths, and then start building towards the 5-year plan. That's what I would start coaching you towards. I really think that like 1 month from now, you should put a mark on the wall to be able to say to your first draft or final draft of who you want to be at 60, and start describing that person in terms of maybe holistic views, and then how the trading activity can help feed towards that as one of the means towards achieving those ends. And I think that will help pull you in that direction and give you the emotional energy and the resilience to help put into place some of these professional practices. That sound fair?
Yep, it does.
Okay.
Makes sense.
All right. So when I lay out this personal brand and 5-year plan to the guys I'm teaching, then what I give them is a very specific task to complete by the end of their 10-week course with me. So these are really the same. These are really the same answers to the process that they went through on the previous page, but it adds the structure of design thinking to add a little more so what to their deliverables. It's not just thinking broadly, yeah, that's kind of where I want to be. It actually makes them produce certain things. I almost think this would work for you. What I do for the doc students is at the end of 3 months, their 10 or 12-week course, they've got to produce like a 10 to, and I'm not saying you got to do this, but this is something we can think about. Although at the 3-month mark is a 10 to 15 page summary that answers these questions. A personal brand and strategic plan. I would think of that as the 5-year plan. And the way that gets answered is back through these sections. I make them produce these sections. in design thinking, you have to do the following things. You have to describe an environmental frame which consists of two things. These first two parts. The current state and the future state. This is where the future state would be where you are at 5 years. And it describes, I think that's a reasonable target for 1 month from now. Identify your identity and values and objectives. You've done a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. You're in touch with your risk tolerances and personal preferences. You've talked about an ideal future or where you want to be in 5 years, a mission statement, a purpose. And then you describe your brand in powerful adjectives. It says, hey, these are the things I have going for me. This is like the beginning of your elevator speech. These are the things that I am, and these are the things that I can do. And this becomes the forces for good. This is the energy that you can apply to the wheels to make progress. Those would be the first two marks on the wall I'd put for the 1 month purpose. The stretch goal would be, I almost would rather just stop there by the end of 1 month. The second month, the next place on there would be in design thinking is the problem statement. What are those things that are just stopping you from going from the current state to the end state? So I don't want to try to do all that like in 1 month unless you just make so much progress because the work you've done so far that you can go. And then I'll leave that up to you to judge. But don't hurry through these current state and future state. The problem statement really is the next set of things to get after. Here's the way I normally describe that to the officers. You know, they're trying to go from a current state, point A, to that future state, the desirable end state of point B. And so they have some idea, they've been trying to go, and then bang, they run into a problem that blocked them. Well, they then say, well, let me detour bypass that and go this way. So they make an adjustment to their plan and they go, and they say, bam, they run into this problem. In each one of those cases, they thought that they saw a clear path to get from A to B in the usual way, but it turned out that there was a problem here. When they did the bypass, they went here and said, well, let me try this thing. And bang, they run into another. And at this point, you know, maybe after 2 strikes, if you will, there's something going on. There's something about this environment. If I now can draw this as an environmental frame, there's something going on in this environment at a deep level. Maybe I'm only seeing, you know, this much of the iceberg. And maybe there's some things happening down in here in the P level, the problem, that maybe there is some deeper thing going on that is generating a manifestation of these problems. There's something like a root cause of a problem. And so I want to spend some time and try to figure out what that is. And then if I can bound that and say, this seems to be the root cause, and if that's true, if I hypothesize that as the deep cause, then I should be able to do this. And then if I can see a way to handle that, I can now start putting this into play and see how I'm doing as I make progress along the way. And if it turns out that I'm able to maintain momentum and actually get to B in, you know, cognitively in my plan, I said this should account for every known problem that I can think of, or I should have the ability to respond. I think I've now addressed the root cause problem. We think of this as the operational approach, the OA. So this is design thinking. Once I've done that and I've come to what I think are the root causes, and I've found a reasonable way that I can get across it using my strengths and protecting against my weaknesses and seizing the opportunities and dealing with the threats. That's sort of that SWOT analysis. I'm now ready to put this more deliberate or mature campaign plan into action. That's where I think we want to be by about the end of 3 months, history has shown. That usually the first month is pretty good at getting the design or the current state, future state. In the second one, I've got a problem statement. In the third one, I've got an operational approach. Those are the big 3 chunks. That's the environmental frame. Let me put that in there. That's kind of like month 1, month 2, and month 3 is the normal progress. I'm going to trust your judgment of going through it, and then at the monthly brief, however far you've gotten, that's where we are, and we just adjust off of that. But that's the pathway that would lead us towards actually generating a pretty good 5-year plan with an operational approach to get there in 5 years. And then if that was the first quarter, then we have 3 more quarters, each with monthly check-ins, where you say, well, now I've got some of these larger quarterly objectives. These are the 3 or 4 things I want to start working towards with monthly updates. And each time we're getting better and better and better and better, internalizing the things we worked on last month, adding some new things. So we're doing those tactical things and the operational things, all building towards this larger strategic plan. And you'll see that there gets to be some synergy, and then we get some kind of assessment instruments for the monthly and quarterlies, and you can see yourself making progress on the things that you want to track. Hey, I want to add these 3 checklists, or I want to make these kinds of performance assessments of my trading. I want to standardize these systems. I want to add a rigorous way of evaluating the results, and then looking for ways to fine-tune systems. So those are the kinds of monthly and quarterly goals and objectives we work on that are in support of that 5-year plan. And that's what the future monthly and quarterly ones would be. But that's how I would see these first 3 months or the first 3 stages kind of going. Is that making sense to you so far?
Yeah. Do you want this on like a shared document where I add to it and you review it? Or
I think that's what we'd at some point, like 1 week from now, or I think 1 week from now, like there's some examples in the coaching things I may have already sent you that I think Patrick Birch's and Kathleen Crusel's monthly updates was really nice. It had a quarterly structure, and then 3 or 4 monthly goals, and then a summary of what the goal is and the progress we made and what I propose to do next week and the results so far. And it was a nice structured way to do that monthly, like a monthly agenda. So I didn't want to specify that, although I think it's a good way to approach it. But I want you to spend some time thinking about that and maybe a different way, or incorporating it to the bullet journal, or kind of try that on for size. And then in the first, maybe at a 1 week check-in or a 2 week check-in, we settle in on it not later than 2 weeks from now. You have an agenda for that monthly check-in that we would follow, and then you build towards that, and then we give it a dry run on that 1 month. And if that feels pretty good, then we adopt that sort of as the monthly follow-up. And that way, the reporting process is geared toward what makes sense for you, not just necessarily for me. I have some ideas on how that could go. That's Patrick Birch's and Kathleen Crusel's, I think, are really good. But I want to give you a chance to build what works for you before we commit to that. Does that make sense?
And you sent those 2 to me?
If I haven't, then I will.
Have you sent?
I think I have, but as you know, I promise more than I deliver sometimes. So what I will do is send you a sample of those. I know they're I know they're in Basecamp somewhere, but I've sent you a lot of stuff. But I will make sure that I send that to you not later than tomorrow. And I'll do that as a due out and a deliverable.
They are documents, or they're...
Yeah, it's a document. It's a I think.
Are they documents, or are they?
Yeah, it's a document. I think it's a Word document. It's either Word or PowerPoint, and it has a very nice layout of a way to do the monthly briefings and to build towards a larger goal. So I'm going to send you. If I haven't sent it, I will send Patrick Birch's. He does a really nice job of going through all of the individual. He was in his young 30s and was going to become an investment professional, had started down that path. And so I probably spent more time with him on the self-exploration and inner work than maybe you need to do. But I'm going to show you his whole package. And in that, there is a format for a monthly debriefing that he ended up doing that I thought was really effective. So I'm going to give you that whole package. The other package is from Catherine Crucial, Crucil, and she did a really nice job of prettying up all the of all that work. So it was a very nice structured approach, and everybody that's used it has really enjoyed it. But I want to give you a chance to kind of chew on that and come up with something that works for you. And it may just be you look at it and say, oh, yeah, that works, and then we'll be good. But I want to give you a week or two to kind of settle in and sort all that shit out. Does that seem fair?
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so those were those two pieces. Let me see. Let's see. This is probably a review for you if you've already been through those workshops. So I just want to hit some highlights that come out of the. This one is from the swing workshop. So in one of the FAQs, I think it was in the third FAQ from like June of last year. It was one of those where there were so many little tactical lessons that somebody said, hey, if you could just list the top-down things or the biggest 30. I think he said, hey, what are your top 10 craft work ideas? So I made a 2-minute list, and my top 10 was like 37. And so what I suggested to all those guys, yeah, that's just the way it goes. When it rains, it pours. So what I suggested to those guys, and some of them did this, and it worked pretty well. I said, take these 37 ideas and do a 3-minute elevator speech for your understanding of each of these topics. All of these are sort of the technical tortoise tradecraft from the bottoms up. And so number 0 there was your personal learning journal. I teach a technique on the 4-part learning journal. There's a video in one of those courses where you get the aha moment, then the reflective discussion, then a commitment to action, and then a column for results. That's like the number one thing that my doctoral students say really helped them maintain continuous learning, is that they had a structured way to convert aha moments from whatever I was teaching or whatever they were experiencing into a systematic model for self-improvement. So if you haven't seen that one, I will send you the specific link to that video. That's another thing I owe you, is the monthly chart.
I'm not sure I've seen that.
I'm going to send you 3 things tomorrow. The monthly chart, the link for the learning journal, and then the podcast link for the full 70 minutes. Those are 3 things for sure I'm going to give you. The other 37 things are things that over the next year, quarter, or month, these are what I think are the top 37 technical pieces that are the essence of my thinking on craft work. So I think of things as, and you've seen from the Swing 2018-12, strategies, systems, techniques, and tips. So strategies are broad approaches to approach the market in a way, like monthly position trading, swing systems, and day trading, and the turbo approach that blends those. A strategy is a general approach. When I render that down into a robotic system that I could program and trade mechanically, that becomes an implementable system, a standalone system of rules that are documented. That's what the mechanical systems from the weekly swing course, like 5 days down, washout, etc. Those are all robotic. They can be traded robotically. There's a set of rules in there. So that's when you distill a strategy down to a mechanical system. A strategy is a broader approach that allows some discretion, or is a general approach to the effort. So if that's a strategy, then a system is a more narrowly refined robotic rule set. A technique is a module or a process that I often use to build out a system. But it's something like my process for daily preparation is a battle drill. It's a ritual. It's a checklist. It's not a trading system. It's not really a strategy for how to approach the market, but it's a piece of technical tradecraft about how to use a ruler, that kind of thing. Does that make sense to you, the distinction?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
what,
it's like
yeah, okay.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's like your exit strategy or within the system.
Exactly. So like the 2-hour battle drill is a module that I use for all exits on all systems. So when I get an idea to trade, I'm putting a little plan together for a system, and I need to add, I know that an exit strategy is part of any system. I start with that, and I figure out what 2R is and how am I going to approach it and what I do. That becomes a general, it's a module or a component that I can drop in. So that's what these 37 things are. They're like little chunks of actionable processes or concepts that are tied together in a meaningful way. It's knowledge and action. Like the plan, prepare, execute, assess for number 13. That describes how I think about
Mm-hmm.
the end-to-end piece for continuous learning, and that's its own little speech. So in one way, one of the things that I can help you with about how to add things to your professional practice, if I could order you to do this, I would make you, do a 3-minute speech on every one of those things, and then, then you'd have to defend your knowledge in like a Spanish Inquisition and prove that you could do all those 30 things. Well, that'd be painful. So what I'm going to ask you to do is look through those things. Yeah, look through those things, and your knowledge and the FAQs, and look through the courseware and the ones that you want to respond to, or that you can that you want to explore further. That would be an example of, hey, I wanted to add a professional practice on position sizing to it, so I picked. Let me see if I picked number 7. This month I want to focus on that video from that lesson from the swing course, position sizing risk versus execution stop risk. I want to apply it to 5 trading cases this week, and you make that a commitment in your what I plan to do this month. And then you go through your daily tasks of trading and your weekly debriefing and your end of month checklist, and you said, well, I set this as a goal to do for this month. Did I actually do that? Did I do it 5 times? And then you report to me on your checklist and said, hey, I told you this was my goal this month, and I did or I didn't do it. If you did do it, then we can look at the results that you got and the insights from learning. If you didn't do it, I'm going to ask you, well, why didn't you do it? I'm going to ask you that, so you can then explore what's the real problem here. That's where, hey, I set this plan, but I couldn't get there. Something came up and it blocked me, and then now you get to explore, like on that chart before, the root cause problem that stopped me from getting 5 stinking trade cases done over 22 days of a trading month. I couldn't get 5 of these goddamn things done. What's the root cause that's stopping me from doing that? And that may be something in your time schedule. It may be yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, are you suggesting that this is done on a chart, or are you suggesting that I actually execute this in the market?
What I would have you do is start with a trade frame that marked up the difference between position sizing risk and execution risk. And if you look at that video from the Swing 2812, it shows numerous examples of me doing that. And then the live trading videos from that same workshop show me doing that live trading. So what I would have you do is, whatever you're trading, whether it's my systems or yours, try applying that trade frame approach and then paper trade it going forward. And then see how that goes. And then see what you can learn from doing that once and then maybe 5 times. And then from that, you'll get a feel for that you can actually apply that technique going forward in the same way that I describe it conceptually. You now have internalized that standard practice. So as an example, let's say that at the end of month one, you've completed your 5-year plan and your identity and your current frame, and you decided, hey, in month 2, I've decided to apply one of these 40 topics. And the one I want to apply is position sizing versus execution stop. And my goal is to do that 5 times in the month of May. Or I don't care, month of April. Pick month of April. In the month of April, I want to do that 5 times, paper trading it forward on a standard trade process that I use on one of my favorite targets, and see what I can learn from doing that, and can I apply it, and then what are the insights from doing that. So let's say that you made that a monthly goal, a goal for the month of May, and you would write that on your monthly coaching session there for that we're going to do on 31 April, right? You say, hey, one of my goals for the month ahead is to do that technique. So you put that on your checklist. Put that in your bullet journal for the month of May. I'm going to show you in a goal setting sheet how I do this with daily and monthly goals. And then on your daily debriefs, each day you say, well, did I do any of those things on my master list? On your weekly review, did I do any of those things towards my monthly goal this week? On your monthly debrief, you say, did I do those things this month? Then on the monthly goal sheet that you prepare for, the May 31st, you said, hey, I set myself these 3 goals for the month of May. I accomplished 2 out of the 3. This is what I learned on goals 1 and 2. On goal 3, I didn't get it all done because there was just too much. And there's no deep-seated psychological reasons why I couldn't do it. Or, hey, I ran into this problem that I just couldn't. Oh, and then we have a different kind of a problem to look at. So what you do is you kind of systematically lay out these, the incremental study of the material that supports your longer-term vision of professional practice, right? So those are the kinds of things that we will do all along the way. The original part of the design thinking, the current state and the end state, those are strategic level goals that we want to get those things right so we don't get lost among the trees in the forest, right? In order to kind of get to that 5-year plan, you got to start with those larger elements of planning that are connected to who you are and who you want to be and how you're going to get there and what your assets and liabilities are and the things that you can leverage and that kind of stuff. We want to respect those large magnets that are going to pull you towards victory. And that's good enough for the first month. The second month is where I think we start adding some of these other little elements. So the reason I show this slide is to say that what I have, I still like this list of things on the left-hand side, those 40. I think of those as my essential bottoms-up tradecraft, the micro lessons from the bottoms up that were still pretty good. I listed them in June 2018. They're still pretty good. If I were to do that list nowadays, I would distinguish this and say, hey, based on the articulation of those things from the Swing 2018-12, I also think these top-down ideas are so important that they are some of the macro ideas, the top-down things that all these little pieces support. These little modules support all of you, but design thinking that I've spent this time on, that I'm going to record a thing for you for tomorrow. Systems thinking, the things that you've seen already from pinch and stretch and super pinch, and you've probably seen the MACD4 systems, the multi-time frame, multi-length. These are all top-down things that get you aligned with the market and address your longer-term goal of looking at the market from multiple lenses so that you don't get caught up in a pre-existing bias. These are all the top-level things. When you apply these little pieces and these top-down pieces, you're getting my best work from bottoms up and top down. That's what I consider to be my take on professional practice and due diligence. Um, so that's where I see the monthly work consists of taking on these chunks in a prioritized list, and I'll help you with the priorities, but it's, you get a vote on that too. But between us, we'll figure out what are the prioritized things to work on for the month ahead, for the quarter ahead, for the year ahead. But they're all in support of that design thinking work you do that's due in a month on current state and end state. Some of that larger picture that'll help pull you through some of this other grunt work. My experience has been that if you don't do that longer term work, that it's too easy to get lost in the tactical details and get burned out, or it doesn't seem to, how's this connecting to some of the, you got to spend the time on that longer term self-assessment and your environment and how it all fits together. That's my genuine advice on all of that. When I talk about, to my officers that are 35 years old, and they're at the point where they're pretty much committed to do another 10 or 15 years and doing a 30-year career. And they're in a position where they actually get to start making choices about what they want to do and where they want to go and what they want to accomplish in the Army and how they want to set up for a career after the Army, because they're going to get out when they're 50. And so sometimes the things about what they want to do at 50 and beyond shape the kinds of choices they want to make from 35 to 50. They're growing families and they want to do things and they want to have skills. They want to achieve things in the Army, but they also want to achieve things out of the Army. So helping them organize their vision in this way gives a real sense of clarity to them. And then when I stay connected to them after their year's worth of work here, I got guys that I'm still, working with or coaching and mentoring and, just fellow soldiers that are, I'm into the 25th or 30th year of, working through their career. They're getting ready to come to the end of a 30-year career. I'm near, I'm 40 years into this career. So my advice on
I can imagine that they
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I can imagine that many of them will feel lost at 50 years old when all they've known is the military, and it's very structured for them, and then enter the other world.
Yeah, they've never given thought beyond their last formation, and there's nothing. I will tell you, there's nothing sadder than a Army colonel at 50 years old who hasn't given any thought about what they're going to do from age 50 to 80. These guys get lost. Those are guys that actually die of heart attacks and they end up getting into a shitty job and they don't know why and they don't know what to do, and that's why this whole idea of, I don't want to be a 50-year-old locked into the choices of an 18-year-old. And I don't want to be an 80-year-old locked into the choices of a 50-year-old. Or, you know what I mean? So some of this work is, we're going to get to everything on that list. Honest to God, you really will. And you'll get onto that as fast as you want and as fast as you need. And the ones that you actually need to work, then maybe not everything on there is something you need. Maybe they're just, there's some of the things that you need to do that are geared towards your own, 35-year or 30-year career already that you need to really refine. And I'm trusting you to help me discover the things that you really need to work on, and then I can pick and choose from this list to get you going. And so I start with those couple that I've already talked about, the 2-hour battle drill, the position sizing risk versus execution risk, the 5-year plan and the design thinking, because those are, no matter what else it is that I can teach you that's any good, all of it is going to be supported by the work you do on those things. And that's the best way I know to get started.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would say on that. I would also just say, in terms of the top-down ideas, the MACD 4 seasons, the pinch and stretch, I mean, and the time frame, that's just money. I mean, that is flat fucking money, if I'm, pardon my language, but um, there's you cannot
Shame on you.
Yeah, that's just what I mean. I mean, you cannot be surprised in the market if you do those things properly. There's just no way you may not take advantage of it, but you're not entitled to be surprised by the move that it made, because those techniques find everything that's in a critical state. And what I mean by a critical state is something is ready to make a larger than normal move in a shorter amount of time than usual in either direction in a big way, and half the market's going to be absolutely surprised in a bad way. So when we find things in a critical state, it starts with a movement, and then momentum comes in, and it gets piled on, and then just like tripwires, the next higher time frame start adding to it, and the thing becomes a runaway train, and they all look the same when they started. Well, there are moments in the MACD 4 seasons where those things are more likely to occur. And there are times in the pinch and stretch way of looking at things that you can find those dojis at the end of big runs, or things that have had big runs that are just, there's just not anything left. And you're going to get a sharp reversal, or you're going to get a second leg up of the same magnitude in a pocket. So all my patterns are based off of that central idea of critical state. And it's not even on the slide, and I realize I got to put that on there. But the critical state, as defined by, find something that is more likely to have a bigger than average move in a shorter than average amount of time in either direction, and then frame it so that no matter which side of the trade unfolds, you can quickly get into that side of it, so you don't have a directional bias. And that forces you to frame the trade in both directions. It forces you to frame the trade with places where the next higher time frames are going to add to it. That's articulated in that Swing 2018-12, that multi-time frame lens. You'll see how that works, and that's just money. So that's an example of the kind of things that, that's a big thing that you might want to start on, hell, I don't know, this month. You could tell me that a week or 2 weeks from now, or you just do it. You're a grown man. You just do it and you commit to that, and then you tell me that's a goal you decided to go after this month, and see how far you can get. As long as you meet those other goals of the current state and end state, you can bolt on these other things to your heart's content. You are your own best judge of that.
Meaning execute a pinch and stretch strategy.
Well, if you think so, here's my guidance on how to do that. Anytime I have a new idea that I want to try, here's the way I do it. I study, in a back test long enough to see that, yeah, this thing's not totally stupid. I could see how that could work. And then almost immediately, I do not exhaustively back test it. I start forward trading it, and I would do it with in 4 phases, like paper trade, until the point where I say, yep, I understand this thing enough that I can now prototype trade it, and I start putting money on it, and I would say, let me call it proto. This is me printing with a mouse. This is pretty good. Prototyping. I probably have a better slide of this somewhere. I wasn't planning on getting here today, but there we are. So I prototype it with real money, but just enough so that I treat it seriously. And I would say, with a lot of guys that are starting out, I just say, go to Interactive Brokers, get an account, trade it with 1 share, and then trade it 50 times with 1 share for $1. Risk $1 on 1 share or something like that. And I say, if you do that with 50 live trades, you will know more about that system than if you'd spent a year back testing it. Because here's my belief, and from my own experience, what I've seen in others, The more exhaustively a guy backtests, the more confidence he believes he's entitled to have to trade it forward, and the sooner he trades at the maximum position size he can justify. And then if the thing performs differently in the forward test than the back test, his brain explodes and he blows up. And the more commitment you have, and the more commitment that you put into backtesting, the more trust and confidence in backtesting, the easier it is to believe that, no, this thing could really work. Just get large and make up my losses. I don't believe in that for myself. What I do is I just look at backtesting. The only thing backtesting shows me is that, hey, this thing isn't totally stupid and it could actually work. So immediately find out if you can trade it. Because I'm going to use my trader's discretion at some point to incorporate all of the lessons that I've learned in the painful experience so that I can trade it psychologically myself. So I paper trade it just to see if what I need to refine on the rules in this first one. And then I put a small enough amount of money that I will take it seriously so that I can get real results with real money on a real broker, and I can see what the slippage and the commissions and the psychology of trading it real live in the market actually is. And then I get to see the difference between the back test and the forward prototype testing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Next step is I start incrementing towards what I call, I'm going to skip stage three for a second. Stage 4 is when I'm in production mode. In production mode, this new system, which I'm going to trade till infinity, in stage 4, in production level, I'm satisfied that this thing has scaled, and now I can trade it at my normal unit of risk, which for me right now is $400 a trade. That's one bullet. That's one brick. Intraday, my span of control allows me to have 4 of those positions on, meaning my daily R is 1,600. If I have $400 at risk on the trade, and if my execution risk is 25 cents, then I can have 1,600 shares. Maximum positions, correction. If my position sizing risk is 25 cents, but my position sizing risk is $1, that's the example I was trying to use. I can actually have 400 shares, right? Because $400 at risk times the position sizing risk of $1 means I can have 400 shares. Now my execution risk might be 25 cents because this thing was like a 5-day down, or it was an excursion and it ended up in a doji and then gave me a 1, 2, 3 entry, right? And maybe that was enough in whatever system I'm using or whichever one of these things. So maybe that execution risk was 25 cents. But my position sizing risk was $1. Maybe the intraday, that was a frog box, so 1.0. Well, if I entered right here, then an adverse move to right here, a new low of the day, gets me out. I lose 25 cents of execution risk. But that only equates to 0.25 divided by $1. That's 0.25 R. And that's fine. It also turns out that that's one of the signals of that collapsing dragon, that this might have been an owl, a hybrid frog successful trade, and then maybe this was an owl entry, and then collapsing dragon, that's a stop and reverse, and then the thing moves down as far as it moved on the first leg. That never surprises me. So it gets to here, and it goes back, and then it comes back, and I scratch here. I get 0.75 R on this one. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that'd be a 1.0 because it went from here to here as 1.0. So maybe I get 1 R on that one. Then my net is +1 minus 0.25. I'm 0.75 R on execution, or I'm sorry, on position sizing risk for the day on my $400. So that would have netted me like plus 300. Now, so I've got 4 bullets or 4 units of risk that I can put on a day. So what I just described there, at first I tried this way and it stopped in reverse and went that way, and that was that first bullet. If I only had one position on, I've got open risk on one, and I've got 3 other ones just waiting to get on. The best I can do intraday, the most open positions I can have at one time would be 4 open positions, each with 1 bullet. Or I could have 1 position on with 1 bullet, and then I've got 3 over here that are ready, and this thing starts working, and then I get a second position in. Now I've got 2 bullets on 1 symbol, and I still have 2 in reserve. And maybe while this is working, it hasn't hit my stop yet. Maybe another symbol works, and I put 1 on. Now I've got 3 in and 1 in reserve. That's so I got 1, 2, 3. That's 3 of my 4 span of control, and then maybe I get a second position on that one. I'm all in for the day. I can't add a third position to either one of these or open a third position, because I can psychologically I'm done at 4 positions. That's the most that I can manage without losing my mind. So I'm just going to manage those professionally. If I see another thing come in that I really want, I have to liquidate enough of this so that I have a position that I can put on that one, and I don't exceed my open risk of 4 units of risk for span of control. What I would love to have happen is that one position keeps working so well that I end up getting 4 units of risk on, and then when it finally makes an adverse move, I'm all out and I can clear the deck, then I'm flat, and then I can get back to the 0 state and get my mind right. This is designed so that I can do this repeatedly during the day and get back to the 0 state and get my emotional equanimity, get back to my proper mindset. So you'll hear me talk about that as number 23, the 0 state. That's what I mean by that emotionally, right? So that's one of the ways that in practice I can maintain the idea of 1 brick at a time, and I can use that psychologically to be able to trade the pinch and stretch and the super pinch. And the way that I can use the RLCO framework and the frog boxes to start building out these different trades that I described over here. So these things, these little pieces turn out to be the components of how I trade, but that's why I call this list the bottoms up tradecraft. But these top down ideas are the strategies that lead to the systems that help me build the trade frames, these trade frames that are beneficial, that I can now take all of those ideas and bring them in and execute. So the big ideas get me to the trade frames. The small ideas help me get to the detailed level of planning and execution. So there's a connection between these 2 lists, if I may say it that way. Is that making sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So this list is in that swing trade, and all basically at different points in the swing trade and the day trade home study courses, all of these things get talked about. But this is the list that kind of pulls them all together. What I probably owe you, let me set as my personal goal for this month, and I'm actually going to get this done before April 13th because I got some guys coming in for a weekend, like a base camp weekend. And what I'm going to promise you that I do for them is I'm going to do my 3-minute speech on all of these. Then you'll be able to, I'll record that, and then you'll be able to play those. You can decide this month which of those you want to kind of maybe prioritize for the months 2 through 12. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So that I will commit to that, and you commit to these other longer term things. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I think I've already addressed these top down ones by that swing 2812 because I talked about all these things in that in that in that workshop. Um, so
Yep.
let me just I want to quickly get to a couple of these other ones. Now you should have seen these already. So the chat room you've seen, that's just a good place for everything. I mean, that's where the work gets done. I have invited you to the Dropbox where you see the project Swing 2812. That's this one. The first thing to look at is this intro to core swing and day trading. That is probably 30 minutes of my best material. I mean, it's just the master integration of swing and day. Listen to that one first. The next one is this one I did near the end, the multi-time frame analysis and that multi-lens. It gives you a way to look at across the top, like monthly, weekly, daily, 2 hour, and 30 minutes. And then it looks at MACD, histogram, I think pinch and stretch, RLCO, I can't remember what the other ones were. But like support and resistance. Oh yeah, RLCO framework, and then support and resistance. And from that, you can systematically go through and get a picture of the market in all these time frames from all these lenses, and you cannot be surprised. So that's what this one does. Number 2 teaches that lesson. The rest of these things were just a group of great lessons and practical applications. You just look at them in that sequence, 3 through 14, and you are in great shape. I would actually look at all of those again, and then I would look at by that time you'll know which of those 37 or 38 things you want to focus. And then I would look at the advanced swing and advanced day, because those get to the details of what this thing covers from top down. So those are the 4 resources I want to share with you in the order that I would go in them with. The next thing, there's some highlights of these 2 that I just want to show you, and maybe to refresh your memory or just as a way to do some additional study. I think the FAQs are worth glancing at. So this is from the advanced swing trade. These FAQs that was probably 40 or 50 people in the last 2 years that have taken that swing course and sent me questions along the way, and I answered them. So that's about, 40 or 50 pages of specific questions they asked plus my answers. And yeah, I'm sorry I can't get it better oriented, but that's what it is. Now, this guy, Neil McGuire, in the last couple months, took a lot of this whole course, and he was actually reorganizing this whole course for me and tried to pull together these things in a more logical way. And I think he's done a nice job of that. And what he did is in this final right board, he's rearranged all these other materials and brought them down here. So let me show you what he's done. This might be an organized way to review that material. Trying to find my sketch thing. There it is. Yeah, so what he did was in the consolidated learning plan, he talks about how he reorganized the lessons, and then lessons 1 through 10 plus all the FAQs and whatnot are organized that way. So he did a nice job of cleaning up that whole advanced swing trade course. So that may be a quick way to look at some of those elements of 0 through 37 that were on that master list. The next thing that I want to say is when you go to the right board on the day trading course, these were some things that came out of the live trading I did a live trading workshop after the boot camp, and you'll see a lot of those principles from the boot camp applied in the live trading. There's some really good things in there. And then this was some bonus material for day trading. And I wasn't sure how much you're doing contracts. You're probably doing a healthy amount of day trading as well as maybe some overnight and some swing. This is some pretty good material here from that builds on the swing 2018. And I would look at those if you haven't seen those before. Okay. Yeah, so that may be. Yeah. The last thing in the day trading course, somebody asked me once, and what do you do routinely every day? So this gets to building out that daily plan and weekly plan. So these are the things that I do every day without fail. And weekly, when I put together my weekly reports, I do this every week without fail. So that's what I reported.
What do you mean? You
Yeah, go ahead.
every day?
Go ahead.
You said you do those daily. You do an elevator speech.
Yeah, every day. Every day my elevator speech. Yeah, every day I do. There's a sample of that in the swing trading course and in the swing 2018. That's my daily trading plan for tomorrow. And there's in that workshop you'll see a script and a sample speech. And in that there's about a 3-minute. I get my mind right. It says before I trade the day, I said, this is the kind of trader I'm going to be today. I'm going to. I think if the market's up, I'm going to do this. If the market's down, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be looking at these sectors up and down. I'm going to look at those targets inside the sector. I review my radar screen and my logic plan that gets me from the market moving in a certain direction all the way down to my actionable target. I talk about what I'm going to do if there's a big gap up or down, or if it's a volatile day up or down. If the market is up or down, which way am I looking? How am I going to reinforce positions, and how am I going to use the time of day to help influence my positions, and how am I going to use the last hour to decide which of my daily positions I'm going to carry over as a swing trade, if any. So I have about a 3-minute speech where I do that, and there's samples in that swing trade 2018-12. That's what I mean by my elevator speech, because that has to guide me in the middle of a busy trading day. I've got to say that that's my intention and that's what I'm going to do, and it forces me to complete my plan, but render it down into a 3-minute speech. When you get good at that, you can do it in a minute, and it reminds you of who you are and what you're about to do, and it respects the preparation that you put into that thing, and that's what gives you the emotional energy to trade properly during the day, at least for me. That's what I mean by the elevator speech. If that's a good thing to do for swing trading and position trading and a trading business altogether, it's a good thing to do to get your mind right. It's the last pep talk before going out onto the field. It's what you say in the huddle, before taking the field. So those are all the things that I do every day to get ready, and then every week to put my week into perspective. And I'm doing that while I'm doing the weekend reports and doing all that shit. So I do that every day and every week. So later, R.J. Hickson and I were talking, and he noted a few other things. He broke it out by before the day, during the day, after the day, weekly things, and then monthly or quarterly periodic review. These things actually kind of write themselves. My opinion is, once you kind of get the daily stuff done, the other stuff is pretty easy to do. But like anything, I would make it into a checklist and then confirm to yourself that you did it until it became a force of habit and something that's harder to not do than to do. Okay? So you'll find the discussion of this in this right board here on the day trading course in Basecamp. Okay? But I put that on the slide for you to sort of as a roadmap. Let's see. Yeah, the rest of this are slides that I'm going to get to when I talk about the details of design thinking. We're not going to do that tonight. This is we're already. You've suffered through over 2 hours of this. Or where does the time go? Huh? So here's what I want to kind of review where we've been, and sort of the way ahead. Those were the things you asked, for insights onto. What I put together. Oh, wait, where's the agenda? First page, sorry. So what we've done is we took a look at. Well, I made some comments in direct response to your bullet points and also to the paragraph that introduced it. I gave you two things on those one slides on the design thinking and then personal branding. This is the one that I require my doctoral students to do at the end. By the end of a 10 to 12 week course with me, they put together their action plan for personal branding and a business plan. I then took a look at the central concepts. That was that 1 through 37 bottoms up list, and then the additions of the top down things. The chat room you've already seen, and then I just did a quick review of key areas to look for in those three resources. The Dropbox, which is the first place that I'd go, then some highlighted areas for the swing trading course, and then for the day trading course. I think the next steps are really for you to kind of take a week and digest all this stuff and kind of confirm that you're that you're where you are at on first blush, and then we want to build out either at that check-in or 2 weeks in, have a plan for what that first month agenda looks like. And so to support that, I owe you Patrick Birch's self work, his format for the monthly coaching session, and then I owed you the link to the full up interview with Cam Newton. Those three things, and I'll get those to you tomorrow. If not late tonight, I gotta take a break here, but I'll get you those things not later than tomorrow. So I think the next thing from you is to kind of review your notes, digest this. The fourth thing, I'm gonna send you a link to the recording of this on a private link for just your own use. There may be some elements later on that I ask you I ask your permission to share with some other people that are also coaching, because there's some things I said that that are not personalized for you, but that may be useful to them. I may just do an edited thing for them. So that's what you kind of owe us, about a week, not sooner than a week, but not later than 2 weeks, kind of a back brief and, an initial feedback from you. And then we'll plan on a 1 month from now doing we'll have a format for you to do your first, your environmental frame 1 and 2, which is current state and future state, and a reasonable monthly agenda for monthly coaching. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Sounds good.
Okay.
Lots to look at, lots to do.
Yeah. Well, time's of the essence. Well, we're not getting younger. So I'll get you the link here. It'll probably be a couple hours.
No, you're right.
It takes a couple hours for this thing to process, and they send me the link to the recording of this, and I'll get that link to you either late tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Take good care, Scott.
That's fine. You said... Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Really quickly, so you were sending me Patrick Birch's, right?
Patrick Birch's packet.
Cam, and then Cam.
Catherine Crusoe's one pager for monthly goal review.
That's it.
Yeah, she's got a really nice package for goal review. I owed you Cam Hawkins's format, or I mean Cam Hawkins's 70-minute interview with me, and then I owed you what the hell is it? Oh, the personal learning journal. Yeah, that was it. Personal learning journal.
Got it.
Okay.
All right.
Seth, would you send me an
Thanks
email?
for spending the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Send me an email to remind me that I owe you those 4 things, along with the link to this video, and I'll make sure I get you that tomorrow. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, Ken. I appreciate it.
Yep. Take good care. And
have a good night.
Yep. Good night.
Yep. You too. All right.